Hi, Stuart again. I like to be pretty positive, but I've decided I should start pointing out some things that make teams dysfunctional. This is episode 1 of what I suspect will be a fairly long series. I want to keep these things short. A lot of these topics are covered in my other videos and very well covered elsewhere on YouTube and on Channel 9, but I just thought I'd make a list of the 7 I've noticed in the last week. Not keeping skills or knowledge current. Look, technology changes constantly. And unless you're a Fortran 4 programmer, you probably ought to learn some new stuff. And you probably should also focus not only on learning new stuff, but learning about what use case the new stuff is for, and conversely, not for. Not keeping the tech stacks current on your projects. I go to pull up and review projects all the time, and therefore an older version of the runtime. And many times that runtime is now deprecated by the vendor or the community. They have truly horrible, old, dreadful versions of their library packages. In many cases, they are not whitelisted because they have security flaws in them that have subsequently been addressed. So it's important. So I have a little tool out on GitHub for looking at NuGet packages, and NPM Audit has that functionality built in. I'm hoping that NuGet will get an audit functionality sometime soon. But you also need to keep an eye on your runtime. And if your team is responsible for maintaining the hosts, that also means keeping your host patched up and ready. Why I love the cloud and containers is that obviates a lot of those problems. It doesn't get rid of them altogether, but it sure makes it a lot easier. Technical debt. So we have all these beautiful tools, most of them free. Static code analyzers, best practice analyzers. If you're up on a cloud, the vendor has all these beautiful tools to help you understand your behavior, the code behavior at runtime, and to do static analysis on your code looking for best practices gaps. If you integrate those as far left as you can, in other words, you get them into your editor environment like VS Code or Visual Studio or IntelliJ, right? You're going to get that advice while you type, and that just makes technical debt even more hard to understand. Because if we clean up as we go, our code will never give us woe. So, measure, understand, and beat down your technical debt, because technical debt is an infinite well from which bugs will spring. Speaking of which bugs will spring from, I see a lot of teams managing to code coverage, and I think they misunderstand what code coverage can tell you and what it cannot tell you. So what can it tell you? It can tell you if there are sections of your code that are not tested. And you can look at those sections of code and do a risk-based analysis and say, okay, I didn't explicitly test that property getter, but I'm pretty sure the language works the way it's supposed to. On the other hand, I have no tests around this incredibly important calculation. Oopsie. So we want to do risk-based testing as developers. And we want to do risk-based testing as a project and as a program. So writing meaningless tests that test things the compiler is going to look out for, or that are so mocked up that they don't actually do anything, or don't give you something diagnostic when it fails. In other words, you should always ask, what does it mean when this test fails? My other favorite thing is tests with no asserts in them. So the whole point to having asserts is if the assertion breaks, something has gone wrong, and either the test is wrong or, conversely, your code is doing something it probably shouldn't. So have meaningful tests, but the bulk of the tests I see are not very meaningful often. Bad DevOps. I have a whole set of videos on this, but here are my 3 top pet peeves. No source control or badly used source control, no CI/CD pipeline, and a complete failure to comprehend, implement, and properly use 12 factors. If you can't deploy on demand, it's a very bad sign. So what do I mean by that? We have a CI pipeline that puts deployable units in a ready-to-be deployed state into a repository. If you cannot then run the CD pipeline and pick an environment to deploy that code to, anytime the group in question wants, you have a problem. If QA has to coordinate with dev when they test something, you're broken. If the business users ask for a demo environment or they ask for a UAT environment and it requires a lot of meetings and coordination, you're broken. So if you can't deploy on demand, that's dysfunction. And that's the first 7. Thanks for your kind attention.